Good morning to all of you here in the sanctuary. I invite you to find a chair to sit in so that you can enjoy the service. Beautiful, beautiful sunny day. A wonderful, wonderful treat for all of us, I think. We also greet all of you who are streaming this morning, our service here at UUCGT, and we welcome all who join us in peace and justice. Please note a change in the process for your joys and concerns. That's one of the ways that we pull together as a congregation. We have each other on our minds, in our prayers, in our thoughts. The flash on our website will give you an address, and you check in there, but it must be entered before 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. If you should be late, it will still register, and then you will be, it will be spoken to on the following Sunday. So it all is not lost. Those of you who are in the sanctuary, over to my, I'm trying my Vanna White, over to my right is a book and a pen, and we would, if you're comfortable putting down your joy or your concern, we are happy to read it later in the service. Our theme today, I think, fits very well into springtime. Awakening compassion. May we smile with the coming of spring. May we shed our winter coats, both real and imagined. And may we rejoice in the slow but sure greening of our plants, our trees, and our spirits. There will be reflections on the subject of awakening compassion, given by 6 members of the Healthy Congregation team who will share moments from their own experiences. You can't see it right now, but a whole nother little group of children just walked by, and let me tell you, that just makes me so happy that we're together. What a thrill. And that's why we're going to have our story time is going to be in video, because for some reason, the ladies couldn't be in 2 places at once. So, a small change. Our own dear Amanda Mangiardi will now play an original piece once as our prelude this morning.
Our opening words are from the Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, The Ordinary Art. Before fixing what you're looking at, check what you're looking for. I said that wrong. Check what you're looking through. It was a beautiful sun-filled day. I had driven 300 miles to see her. She was 94 and had not left her room for close to 8 months. I was her firstborn grandson, and she was so happy to see me. But after catching up, we sat in silence on the edge of her bed, and finally she complained how gray a day it was. I realized her one window hadn't been cleaned for nearly a year. When I said this, she chuckled, as only someone 94 can, and uttered with her Russian accent, "Got a dirty eye, see a dirty world." It is the same with our minds and hearts, for our very self is the one window we look through to this life. And so often we suffer the mood of a dirty window, believing the brilliant world is gray. Perhaps the purpose of an authentic relationship is to help each other keep our minds and hearts clear. Perhaps inner work is the ordinary art of window washing, so that the day is fully the day. Mark Nepo then offers this brief meditation. Please join in if you feel like it. Sit quietly until you feel centered. And now use your breath to wash away ideas from your mind. Breathe evenly and wash the film from your heart. Breathe deeply and wash the conclusions from your eyes.
So good to see you, and so wonderful to see you. Doesn't help if you can't hear me. There we go. Minister Mobile, here we go. Well, good morning. It is so good to see so many of you and to have the sanctuary so filled up and to feel all this energy. I am the Reverend Alex Jensen. I am the minister here, and it is such a pleasure to meet some of you that are now returning and joining us again after a long 2 years. And so let's just enjoy this together and being together this morning. And as we enter into this time, we also acknowledge the land that we live and gather on, the land known originally to the Anishinaabe as Kichiwi Kwedong, the place of the Big Bay. We recognize the indigenous peoples who lived on these lands for generations before centuries of violence and colonization, the Anishinaabe, who are the Ojibwe and Odawa in our region. And so we raise the birch bark basket holding the 4 sacred medicines of sweetgrass, cedar, sage, and tobacco, not for our own comfort or to make ourselves feel better about this past, but to remind us to hold and make space for the Anishinaabe as we work to reconcile the harm of colonization. And to start our service, as our practice is each Sunday, we light a flaming chalice as Unitarian Universalists, the symbol of our faith and a light that reminds us of the immeasurable worth of every human being. And we join in this lighting with congregations and communities all across our country and world this Sunday. And for those of you tuning in online, we also invite you to kindle a flame with us as we kindle our flame here in the sanctuary. And our words this morning come from Ber Kolesqua, which I will read, and thanks to Barb for lighting our chalice. As we light the chalice, may our souls become its hearth. We join our hearts to the one great flame of bright compassion, beloved community, and fervent justice. May we become lanterns to the world, lighting the way for all. So we now also sound our singing bowl, calling us into this time together, the sacred time that we've set apart from our busy and full lives. I invite you to listen to its sound as it dissipates into the silence as we join in worship this morning. And now we will hear our opening song this morning, Nothing More, performed by our very own Renee Russell, our music director. Please rise in body or in spirit as you feel comfortable and able, and if you feel comfortable to sing along, the lyrics are also printed in your order of service. Good to see you this morning.
To be humble, to be kind, it is the giving of the peace in our minds. To a stranger, to a friend, to give in such a way that has no end. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other and nothing more. To be bold and to be brave, it is the thinking that the heart can still be saved, and the darkness can come quick. The danger's in the anger and the holding on to it. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other, nothing more. Tell me what it is that you see, a world that's full of endless possibilities. Heroes don't look like they used to, they look like you do. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are
Good morning. I'm Susan Leo. How do I become more aware of the impact of my actions on others? How do I grow in courage and compassion as I strive to awaken my ability to have a positive impact on my environment and relationships? From the lens of healthy congregations, I take these questions very seriously. I feel called to share a deeply meaningful interaction I had with a member of my former congregation in Ashland, Oregon, as our Healthy Congregations team equivalent was getting started back there. We had the benefit of experiencing several trainings by a UU minister trained in nonviolent communication to get us started. Shortly after I joined the team, I was at our Sunday coffee hour after service, and I approached two women I knew talking about the local food pantry, where several UUs volunteer. I learned that the food bank was looking for a new executive director. One UU woman in this pair was on the board and was talking about candidates for the position. She said something like, "Joe is a retired banker capitalist, a selfish guy only looking for status." These two women continued to badmouth Joe. I didn't know Joe, but I was truly shocked that my lovely UU friends were talking this way about someone who was known to the community. I stood there wondering whether I should just walk away or say something. I took a deep breath and I decided to say something like, "Diane, I do not know this man. However, if the reason you think he should not be hired is because he was a successful banker, that really sounds like a poor reason, and it does not speak well for the person of your choice. I feel uncomfortable being in this conversation." Silence followed, and I felt very uncomfortable, exposed, and nervous. I worried that I had offended Diane. However, after a short pause, she told me she would think about what I had said. We subsequently had a lovely conversation and continued to deepen our friendship. She joined the Healthy Congregations team shortly after this and became a huge proponent of the nonviolent, compassionate communication practice groups and was very active in our community on that basis. This little exchange was very meaningful to me. It tested me. It stretched me in a significant way. In some ways, it seems minor to me now. It happened over 6 years ago. But it lives with me and has been a source of strength when I face other uncomfortable situations. Things might not have turned out as well as they did. However, I have learned that voicing my discomfort in other situations, including personal and family interactions, with care and curiosity, has led to my understanding myself better and connecting at a deeper level with others. Conversations have a chance of getting real and not staying superficial. My family of origin did not encourage discussion of difficult issues. Making waves was very strongly discouraged. It is a journey for me to learn what is important to me and voice it despite my discomfort. I hope my spiritual home, my new home here, will allow me to continue to develop this relational muscle in relative safety by forgiving any discomfort I create and engaging with me if there are disagreements or conflicts. I know that is what I need, and I believe it is what my community needs. Now we'll have a reflection by Bob Termott.
Good morning, everyone. My friend Suzanne and I have known each other for nearly 20 years now. She and her husband Jeff came from California to visit us about 8 years ago, scheduled to coincide with her work with the Traverse City Film Festival. I had wanted the two of them to give me an idea of what they wanted to do this time, since they had made a similar trip before. Despite my best intentions, my ability to pull it together with their input before they arrived was hampered by the recent passing of my Oma, my last living grandparent, which entailed working through family drama around plans for her memorial service. I was emotionally drained. Suzanne is a brilliant educator with encyclopedic knowledge of many topics and a highly skilled planner herself. We discussed options after they arrived and agreed on the most desirable ones. But I was slow to take the lead on making them happen. Suzanne became rather upset with me. She felt stressed that I seemed to want her to take the lead on organizing our plans, even though she's on vacation and trying to figure out her film festival work and viewing schedule, etc. And my approach in general is to be very inclusive and include the planning with my friends who visit. And this is especially the case with Suzanne, who usually altered any plans I'd come up with in the past anyway. We talked through how we each felt, and things smoothed out some during that stay. and more over the years since then, I realized that my way of trying to be inclusive in every detail is not always appreciated, or maybe even the best approach. Some people really appreciate not having to deal with the details all of the time. Recently, Suzanne and Jeff came to visit us again, this time in California. She texted me about 6 weeks in advance and expressed excitement for our time together, and I responded right away with my suggestions for possible things that we could do, and she liked all of them. Later, I found a really cool concert that weekend, and when they agreed, made the purchase before they even arrived. Then they arrived really tired from a much longer drive than expected, and so we dropped some of the plans to give more downtime and had a wonderful weekend together. Probably our best ever. One of the ways we awaken compassion in our community is to take care of our community and our neighbors. There are 4 ways now to contribute. You can still mail a check to the office. You can download the Give app. You can go to our website, or you can put money or a check into the basket. Please give in love and hope.
Hello. I'm so short, I have to get up on a little stool here. I'm Marianne Rivers, and I'm here to share my reflection. Many years ago, a friend suggested that I look up the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I had never heard of the book or the agreements, but the next time I went into Horizon Books, there it was. Not a big book, a little book on an end cap, and it kind of jumped out at me. I picked it up and looked at it. First, be impeccable in your word. Second, don't take anything personally. Third, don't make assumptions. And fourth, my favorite one, always do your best. That lets me off the hook. Don't take anything personally and don't make assumptions just didn't make any sense to me at the time. They were very far out of my usual pattern. And if someone said something cruel to me or about me, well, I thought that was quite personal. And don't we assume something all day long, all of us? That didn't quite click either. But after I'd spent some time thinking about these agreements, it helped me to step back from my defensiveness about my behavior, and I began to understand it a little bit more. When someone speaks unkindly or unfairly to me, I just say to myself, well, that's theirs, not mine. And I then, assuming is something I work on all the time. I haven't quite gotten that yet. The one about being impeccable with my word, though, that really vibrated with me. I was raised by two very sarcastic, critical people who encouraged my brother and sister and I to take stabs at each other whenever possible. As bright, witty people, they demonstrated one-upsmanship to a high degree. What could I, as a young person, do but imitate and defend myself by that imitation? And as a person desperately wanting attention and acceptance, I did my best. Of course, at the time all this was brewing, I thought nothing of it because it was normal. That was my life. That was just how people talked, I thought. TV was very similar. But then one day when I was about 20, 24, I was at the pediatrician's office with one of my children, and there was a sign on the desk. And as it was one of those if, then sort of things. And the one that jumped out at me was, if a child is raised with sarcasm, the child will learn to be sarcastic. And I realized that there I was. I was a perfect example of that saying. And using some of my parents' vintage stabs, such as, well, you weren't raised in a barn, or don't you ever keep up with anyone? And I realized that this was a very embarrassing moment. That I was doing what they had done. Didn't I remember how that felt? Didn't I understand that I was being just as difficult for them? I had to look in the mirror and see what I was doing, to see who I had become. I didn't like what I saw, and thus began years of working, trying to curb my tendency toward sarcasm and criticism, to try to be impeccable with my word. What lessons that little book taught me. Recently, I was introduced to another little book with a lot of life lessons to offer. It's called Communication Fundamentals by Jean Morrison. In a cartoon format, Jean suggests that when we're speaking or listening with conscious awareness of observations, feelings, need, and request, we can enrich our own lives and the lives of others. And here we are in our church. We've all agreed to be in our faith together. We have a covenant of principles, 7 of them, perhaps 8 pretty soon. And when we work together, we can help each other to be our best selves, to offer a loving, caring community. When we lead with understanding and compassion, not sarcasm and criticism. When we lead with trust and respect, not suspicion and separation, then we're helping each other add to an open, accepting, honest community. We are doing number 4. We're doing our best. And now Richard Miller is going to share with us his reflections.
Thank you, Marianne. From a very personal experience several decades ago, depressed, emotionally isolated, on a breezy autumn afternoon, I wandered alone in an open meadow, sat down to reflect and feel sorry for myself. Into my solitude trotted a shaggy-haired dog. He casually sat down beside me, and big tongue hanging out of his mouth while gently panting and catching his breath. We restfully enjoyed each other's company for a while. Of course, I don't really know what was going on in his mind, but I like to think he somehow knew what was going on in mine. The next day, reflecting on the previous day's experience, I put these words to paper. Brief friend, I didn't ask. I didn't seek your company. You joined me anyway. I don't know how or if you knew I needed you, but grateful for you by my side, I'm glad you came. Voiceless, we rest together in the field. Words have no power in your world, yet all the same, we somehow cross, and more than wind flows here. However brief, a bond between connects. Such different lives, yet bedrock, compassion, exposed, shared across differentiation. Now, Reverend Alex will share with us our congregational joys and concerns.
It is our practice as a religious community to set aside time in our service to name and honor the joys and concerns that touch and mark our lives, the milestones and moments of our lived experiences. As you might have heard earlier, we have changed up our format to doing joys and concerns a little bit for those of you especially tuning online. So make sure that you pay particular attention. In order, before we had the virtual social hall that people would sign in before the service and put in their joy or concern in the chat feature there. Instead, in the Flash, there is now a link to a Google form that you can fill out with your joy or concern in order to allow for more people to provide their joys or concerns for us to share. And we ask that you do this before 9 o'clock on a Sunday so that we can have time to gather all those joys and concerns. And not to worry, if you end up filling it out a little bit too late, it will be for sure included in the following Sunday's joys and concerns. And of course, for those of you here in person, the good old-fashioned way of going up to write in the book that usually is over there works perfectly well as well to share your joy or concern. And so I will now be sharing some of those joys and concerns that have been offered up for us to hold on our hearts today. If something is a bit too heavy to share with us in our service, I invite you to reach out to myself or to a member of our congregational care team. Is there somebody from congregational care who would be willing to identify themselves as a point person this Sunday? There's someone, Judith over there, waving her hand. You can reach out to Judith or any of the other congregational care team members, or simply hold it on your heart here in this room as you are held in the love of this community. None of us is meant to travel life's journey alone. And so now, here are some of the joys and concerns that have been offered up for us to hold on our hearts this morning. We have a candle, blessings this morning to my god sister Georgina, and to her mother, my godmother, Zora. We have a candle. Please keep Barb Berry in your thoughts as she recovers from a pacemaker and plant. A candle of joy from Kelly Mack. Glad to be back. Blessings to the families who have lost loved ones. Some dear to me are in my heart today. Thanks for the music. We have 2 candles from Kim Greeby. Where's Kim? There she is. We have a candle for the Ukrainian people who, in the face of such sadness and devastation, show us what true courage looks like. And we light another candle. Please light a candle for Margaret McIntyre from Mackinac Island, who passed away 4 days ago. Margaret and her husband owned the Iroquois Hotel for 68 years. I met her when I was 18 and came to the Iroquois as an 18-year-old housekeeper. We remained friends for the next 49 years. May she rest in peace. We light a candle as well for Nancy and Bob Doty. I come with the news that Bob Doty is now entering hospice care in his home and is entering into his final days. So please keep Bob and Nancy in your hearts and on your prayers. We also light a candle for Connie Mooney, who recently is now in Kalkaska Memorial Hospital recovering from a stroke. She bears good news that she is likely to make a full recovery, and so we light a candle for Connie this morning. And now we light one final candle for all the joys and concerns that remain in the silence of our hearts, but are not forgotten. Forgive me. I have one other joy to share, or joy and concern to share from Chris and Rick Walter. We are grateful that our dear friend Lolita had returned home from Midland after a 3-week medical saga that began in Sitka, Alaska, while visiting her son and family, transitioning to the U of M Medical Center for serious cervical spine surgery. Now begins the long recovery, hoping for the best. So as we draw our hearts close this morning and awaken compassion in ourselves, let us take a moment to take some deep breaths together as we enter into this time of prayer and meditation. Taking a deep breath in and out. Another deep breath in and out. We pause this morning to savor the gift of compassion, the gifts of vulnerability, acceptance, loving kindness, and grace. As we think on the times in our lives when we've made mistakes, messed up, or fallen short of loving our loved ones and neighbors as their full selves, may we hold the impacts of our actions over the intentions of our egos. May we be bold to challenge others and ourselves when we aren't being our most compassionate self, to be brave enough to make waves, to travel toward disagreement and conflict rather than run from it. May we also avoid making assumptions and taking things so personally, which we are so apt to do. Each person is on their own journey and has their own set of struggles that we may know nothing about. May we hear the needs of each moment, being mindful and present to what is at hand and is most precious on our hearts. May we also know when we need one another, even at times when we haven't asked, but compassion and companionship were needed anyway. As we communicate from the heart, let us not shut down or push others away when things get rough. Instead, may we awaken compassion in ourselves so that we can share this abundance with others. And at times when we feel powerless to change the world or make a difference in whatever small way we might, may we remember the power of compassion to change hearts and minds. May we be emboldened to live out compassion's hefty charge and live into these principles and values that we so deeply affirm. May it be so, and amen. Jim will now offer a reading and his reflection.
I have two parts today. One is to offer a reading from Pema Chodron. Pema Chodron is a Buddhist nun who lives in Nova Scotia. And these are the two books that I pulled the excerpts out of for the reading. Only in an open, non-judgmental space where we're not caught up in our own version of reality can we see and hear and feel who others really are, which allows us to be with them and communicate with them properly. When we talk of compassion, we usually mean working with those less fortunate than ourselves. However, to awaken compassion in trying to help others, we might come to realize that compassionate action involves working with ourselves as much as working with others. And to the degree that we have compassion for ourselves, we will also have compassion for others. Having compassion starts and ends with having compassion for all those unwanted parts of ourselves, all those imperfections that we don't want to even look at. Compassion isn't some kind of self-improvement project or ideal that we're trying to live up to. Really communicating to the heart and being there for someone else means not shutting down on that person, which means, first of all, not shutting down on ourselves. This means allowing ourselves to feel what we feel and not pushing that away. It means accepting every aspect of ourselves, even the parts we don't like. And as we begin to have compassion for ourselves, the circle of compassion expands to others. The what and whom and how becomes wider. Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It's a relationship between equals. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. This is what it takes to become involved with the sorrows of the world, to extend love and compassion, joy and equanimity to everyone. No exceptions. Now my reflection. I first learned of the Russian invasion of Ukraine while my wife and I were on a spring vacation. I heard it on a news report in the middle of the night on my earbud while my wife slept. Like so many others, I felt sad, afraid, angry, confused, and powerless. My dad, who was in the medical corps in World War II, used to say that everything is cheapened by war. A Ukrainian soldier echoed him recently when he said on the PBS NewsHour, referring to a Russian commander, "These people aren't people. They aren't even animals. They don't recover their dead. They don't even count them." As the reports of inhumanity have worsened, my longtime pacifist ideals have been challenged. In fact, overwhelmed by my sense of urgency to see the suffering in Ukraine stop by any means necessary. As a person who typically aspires to extend benevolence to all living beings, I am unsettled by the flashes I have had of visceral hate toward Vladimir Putin, and I'm disquieted by my imaginings that NATO planes would bomb, obliterate Russian convoys. It was simpler being a pacifist and a war resistor when our country was the occupying aggressor in Vietnam. The shoe is on the other foot now. I wouldn't have predicted my supportive feelings for the Ukrainian citizen forces violently defending their country. I guess I'll have to extend a little self-compassion toward myself for the internal uncertainty about pacifism as a universal response to military conflict. And if I want to put my money where my mouth is, my outrage and compassion for the suffering of Ukrainians and Russians too ought to translate into some tangible outcome, not just fervent wishes sent into the prayerosphere for the killing and destruction to stop. Intention means a bit more with action. So I sent a little money to Doctors Without Borders and the UN World Food Program to honor my dad, and I've recommitted to seeking nonviolent and constructive solutions in my relationships and to the local issues on which I can have some modest impact. Now, Barb Colton will share our final reflection.
My reflection is about intentions and impacts in relationships. The first couple of times that I held my baby granddaughter in my arms as she fell asleep, it was very precious. Yet I found myself so wanting to savor the moment that I became preoccupied with how I was doing, driven by a need to meet certain parameters. Of course, I can't let her fall, and I don't want her to awaken and perhaps cry and need to be returned to her mother, who is hovering nearby. I notice my shoulder and my arm are at an odd angle, and the arm of the sofa is unreachable without possibly waking her. I'm loving the warmth of her tiny body and sweet baby smell, but I am holding myself so tight that it is now hurting. I find myself wondering why those years of yoga aren't supporting me better. I deeply sense the fragility of the moment and vulnerability of this tiny being. I have managed to turn my dream of the perfect new grandma moment into a contortionist nightmare. At least for me. Our baby was still just fine. Soon I did have to move, and then she indeed cried, woke up, and I passed her to her mother in order to stand and stretch. Not long after, another opportunity arose to take this delicious child into my arms as she was being embraced by sleep. This time, I carried her to my favorite armed leather desk chair. As I sat down, my arms were supported, and I made sure we were aligned. She was centered on my body just so. As she entered a deep sleep, I could sense exactly how connected we were. With each of her breaths, her tiny belly rose and fell, pushing towards and lifting away from mine, and mine rose and fell towards her. Each in our own rhythm, breathing together as one, held by the warm room, itself breathing along with us. Wrapped by the day's wind and the earth's rotation, all together we choreographed something brand new. These two situations, both all about me meeting another exactly where we were, these two experiences are the difference between acting solely out of my own intention and instead deeply hearing the needs of the moment. Initially, my desires and my rather absurd ideas about what was important ended awkwardly for me and with disruption to her. Waking up to how I got in my own way bridged the path for the next opportunity to unfold, where we both found our needs more than met. When I could let go of my thinking and anxiety, of my need to do it right and the impossible constraints imposed by myself, then I found more than I'd ever expected. And now our closing music, Breathe, played by Amanda Mangiardi.
As we extinguish this chalice, may we remember the calls of our hearts and of our shared humanity to love one another as ourselves. May this flame remind us of the spark of life in every heart, and may our collective sparks awaken compassion in ourselves and in others to transform this hurting world. And as I say each week to you for our benediction, in the spirit of covenant, community, and commitment, in this spirit of this awakened compassion that we now share, may we be made ready to serve one another and to create the world that we so desperately dream of. Go in peace, all. May it be so, and amen. Our service is now at its end, and so for those of you that are online, we invite you to return to the Zoom virtual social hall for a time of fellowship and community. For those of you here in person, rumor is that we've started having coffee hour again with coffee after the service, and so we invite you to join with one another there and enjoy a time of fellowship and some nice treats. I have one quick announcement before you all scuttle out the door. On Saturday, May 7th, there will be a garage sale at UU here to raise money to support Doctors Without Borders and their efforts in Ukraine. There are many ways that you can help to make this a success, including donating, shopping, and or volunteering to help. Kim Grebe will be in the hallway after the service if you'd like to explore opportunities to help out with this event. So again, that is on Saturday, May 7th. There will be a garage sale here to support Doctors Without Borders. Thank you all for being here. Our service is now at its end. Go in peace and grow in love.